Hey, Shawn, the second half was epic, was it not? Wow. I know you said that this book might not appeal to certain readers, but it's definitely one that I will be recommending to everyone. Wow. One thing that I am just loving about it is that on the surface, it's just a really great, engrossing story. It really is. But then there's so much depth to it. And I've been analyzing this cover now that I know how the story ends, and I love cover art, and I am just fascinated by this cover now, and the magnitude of the Native American over here on the horse, and the minute scale of our main character here on the cover with his mule. And the fact that, it's in color except for the Native American. I think you could read a lot into the cover itself, once you read the story. Covers like that are amazing to me. And yes, I totally agree with you about the dimensional quality of these characters. This author is just brilliant on many, many levels. So the one thing that I wanted to mention today was, I guess, communication, maybe. One thing I noticed after I mentioned the first three symbols that we talked about, there was another one. It was this constant reminder all throughout the story of the letters that this guy wrote to his daughter, and they never made it there. None of them made it home until the very, very end. And I just felt like that was a recurring theme that the author was bringing up, but I couldn't really put my finger on what it was. And then once I read the story, I went and tried to look up some, interviews or thoughts, and I didn't really find much, but one thing that I did find and really struck me was this idea of communication. And it brought back to that one scene. You remember it when I forget, I'm horrible with names, but our main guy in the stovepipe hat, our Shawnee boy, whose name I also cannot remember, Old Woman from a Distance. Old Woman from a Distance. I wrote that one down. Old Woman from a Distance puts on the stovepipe hat, and the other guy gets really, really mad about it and starts this whole conversation of mine and yours, mine and yours. And that's the only bit of English that he teaches this guy, and they work together, 2 years? And he doesn't take the time to teach him English, or even attempt to, except for mine and yours. And if that thought isn't profound in the context of this story, in the setting, I don't know what is. Yeah. And the other things that came up with communication were, at the end, the fact that the girl had never told her aunt her concerns about Creepy Eye. And if she had, would they even, be effective? I'm kind of thinking they would have fallen on deaf ears. The aunt wouldn't have wanted to hear that. That happens a lot in real life. And the fact that the little girl, she wasn't so much a little girl at the end. She was, an early teen by then. But the fact that it ended with her going to take the guy and bury him without anybody knowing what had happened, just complete. So all this lack of communication I thought was very, very interesting in the story. So yeah, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts have been. This is just a profound book. I just have loved thinking about it and thinking about it with you. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, and if you've settled on any ideas with Old Woman from a Distance, because I'm still pondering that one. So waiting to hear from you. This is part of the Tennessee portion of the Trail of Tears, where 10,000 Cherokee Indians were forced west between 1838 and 1839 out to Oklahoma for resettlement. I think that the Shawnee tribe that our story is written about had to move west earlier than the Trail of Tears, but yeah, it talks about them trading their land for some goods and forced to move west, and then finding out that they'd been cheated of half of what they were told they were getting once they got to their new area. It's a really beautiful place, but it feels so somber. So this is the Red River at Port Royal, where the Cherokee would stop along the Trail of Tears to exchange their goods for foodstuffs. You know, I didn't think about this until just now today, but when I was filming at the waterfall, I really felt Bellum's enthusiasm for setting out on that adventure. And now, after having read the second half of the book and being here, I really feel the way the author, Carys Davies, has made me feel what that Shawnee boy, Old Woman from a Distance, was feeling as he headed back to his birth home to deliver those final letters. Really just kind of wow.
Hey Doris, I'm just going to take you on a quick neighborhood tour. This is what's known as a Shotengai, which is an old-style shopping street. And there's not much activity because it's so early in the morning, 9 o'clock. Japan doesn't really get going until at least 10. But it's still hopefully a little interesting. You can see the shops are all shuttered. Maybe it won't be very interesting at all. But this is about a 3-minute walk from my apartment. I'll be moving soon, but still pretty close to this area. Oh, here's some gorgeous. This is a photography shop. Look at these pictures. All right, well, that's probably the highlight of the tour. Japanese shrine. I feel a little bit weird filming it, but I don't think I'm committing any sacrilege. So yes, that's the local neighborhood shrine. I believe it's called a hokora, and it's where Japanese people on our intermittent but certainly regular basis will stop for a quick 1 or 2 minute ritual, clap their hands 3 times. I'm not sure. I don't want to pretend I know it, but ring that gong and pray there. Okay, I don't really want to film somebody doing it. I don't think that's disrespectful. But you can see how quick it took. She was there and gone. And it's where you pray for the safety of your family, of your loved ones. And this one is very close to my house, and there's one on most Shotengai, or most neighborhoods have at least one, maybe more than one. And that's about the extent of my understanding of hokora. But I thought it was apt, and maybe I'll start walking you home, because I realized that, well, maybe I'll find a place to sit down. I didn't bring my tripod out today. I thought that was an apt thing to feature in today's video because of the story that we are still discussing, West by Carys Davies, and Bellman's lack of concern for at least the first half of the novel for his family's safety. We don't get much about his grief. I think we understand his ridiculous quest as a way of shelving that grief. And while he does do his best to write letters that never get delivered, as you point out, to his daughter, he doesn't really start dwelling on or missing her until the second half. And so I just thought that shrine would be a way to kind of start to talk about that. So this is near where I do a lot of my outdoor filming, and I was dismayed and a little pissed off that my usual bench was occupied until I saw how cute the two workmen are that are occupying it. So I'm going to surreptitiously show them to you. I'm so bad. Yeah. Especially the shorter one, hey? Okay, this is as much of my t-shirt as I'm going to show you because I don't want you to see. So as I was choosing which shirt to wear today, and it happened upon my Wizard of Oz t-shirt, I think I got it off the Book Riot webpage a couple of years ago. Suddenly I thought, oh, the Wizard of Oz and West. There's quite a bit of resonance, don't you think? I'll leave that with you, and I will think about it some more. But there's no place like home. There's no place like home. If I only had a brain. So I couldn't find any place to set my iPad down that was the right level to film so that I could be looking at my notes. So I just came home and had some bad luck with my, usually one of the most pleasant things about filming outside, which is my can of, this is now iced coffee because it's summer and it's actually already really hot out there, which was another good reason to come home. One vending machine, I put my money in, it went right through to the coin return, tried it 3 times, couldn't get it, they didn't like my money, and the next one I went to didn't give me a coffee but kept my money. That kind of stuff never happens. Those vending machines are so reliable, so this third time's the charm. Yes, the communication and miscommunication and lost communications, big theme of the novel, as you said. Yes, I totally agree. I didn't want to delay making this video anymore because I kept trying to hatch upon an insight over Old Woman from a Distance's name. I mean, and I don't have one. I don't have any big ones. I mean, obviously, woman, femininity, in a way the indigenous cultures was feminized by the settler cultures and raped, just the way sexual assault is such a major part of this story. And from a distance, so how about up close? Old women, put a positive spin on it, old women are wise. And he was wise in so many ways. But the from a distance and up close I'm curious about. Just flashing upon Bellman, wondering if he should be cuddling with the boy to keep them both warm one freezing cold night. So at a distance, close. Okay, maybe I have had more to say than I thought. Brilliant insight which I missed about mine and yours. It's the only English Bellman teaches him. I loved the fact that you pointed that out because it gave me a whole other spin on this story. And all the stuff about Bess, Aunt Julie, and the Elmer Jackson peeping Tom freak of a ogre of a man. Also about the name, Bellman starts calling him by his name in a bantering, affectionate way. Far into their journey, he starts. But you're right, they don't speak, they can't communicate. And Bellman starts wondering, what is it like to be you? But he still doesn't ask him because he still can't speak to him. But he remembers wanting to ask him that before and wondering if he'd ever asked him, but that he couldn't have because they didn't have a language in common. And then I just want to finish, just after the halfway point, Bellman starts to regret the crazy journey. Did you see Azalea's comment? I can't remember if it was on your copy of the video or mine, on your channel or mine, where she said, I hope you guys are going to enlighten me that this isn't just a stupid guy with a midlife crisis. Well, I think it's a bit more than that, but that figures in, so. But he starts to realize he'd made a huge mistake and starts missing his daughter. He wonders if the search had been undertaken at too high a price. Duh! And this short quote, this sentence, he began to feel that he might have broken his life on this journey, that he should have stayed at home with the small and the familiar instead of being out here with the large and the unknown. That's, a rich part of as the novels. There's a turn in the story that comes too late for Bellman. And then Bess imagining him, fantasizing about him, wondering about him. These two paragraphs to me are almost like the heart of the novel, so I'd really love to hear what you have to say about these. Even so, Bess thought about it often, this other realm, and sometimes in the mornings, between dreaming and waking, it seemed to merge into the picture she had in her mind of the West, where her father had gone, which she imagined to be a place of undulating grass and blue skies and distant craggy mountains, a place where things that were dead here in Pennsylvania and Kentucky were still alive. There were times when Bess let herself consider the possibility that her father had taken her mother's blouse, not so he could trade it with the Indians, but so that her mother would have something beautiful to wear when he found her, that the knitting needles and the copper thimble were so she'd have something to do on the long journey home. I think that's so powerful. And we know what happened to the mother's blouse, and especially the knitting needles. I don't remember what happened to the copper thimble so much. But what do you make of all that? To me, that's a way to really get into the meat of the second half. So I will leave it at that. Talk to you later.
The thing about living in the country is if your own neighborhood mules aren't showing up, you can just call around and find another. This is Elvis. He's a fine specimen, isn't he? I don't really know, been thinking about because mules are kind of a weird occupation for a story. So I've been wondering about that. The only thing I can come up with is mules are a hybrid, part horse and part donkey. They don't occur naturally in nature. Curious. Hey, guy. He's so cute.
Hey, Shawn. Wow. That Wizard of Oz shirt was spot on. I just hadn't realized how huge a theme home was in this book. And I don't know how, except there's just so much to unpack in this book. It blows my mind how much there is to think about in this book. It's amazing. But yeah, that thought on home and those two thoughts that you read from Bellman and Bess really were impactful, especially in thinking about home. Just the fact that Bess was imagining where her father was and then imagining him bringing her mom back with him. And the way he wrote it, it had a very dreamlike quality, actually reminiscent of some of the scenes in Wizard of Oz. And wow, yeah. And then at the same time, Bellman is realizing that he'd be better off home with Bess. And even you have the flashbacks to him thinking about his life in England and the itch that made him leave there and whether or not they'd have been better off staying in England. And you have the Shawnee boy, old woman from a distance. There's that far and near coming to play there. Even he is thinking as he's traveling back to take the letters to Bess and realizing that she lives where he used to live. That used to be his home. And then him going back out west, that is now his home. Just amazing, amazing thoughts on home to unpack in this book. I could just think about this book for days. I have been thinking about it for days. I definitely think I want to read it again. Oh, it's just amazing. But yeah, the comment from Azalea, Azalea, thought you were spot on with that. Bellman was the just stereotypical midlife crisis riding off on his Harley when he should have been home with his daughter. Most definitely. And unfortunately, he realizes that too late. And there's a quote that I wanted to read from the book that I just thought, wow, it just really said so much. So let me get that for you. You had so many ways of deciding which way to live your life. It made his head spin to think of them. It hurt his heart to think that he had decided on the wrong way. That paragraph was just heart-wrenching. And again, so much to think about with the decisions that we make in life and how they impact ourselves and others. And I'm just completely wowed by this book. I guess you can tell that. And now, I have one more thing to talk about, and I've been arguing with myself this whole time about whether or not I'm going to go there, but I'm just going to go there. I remember Robert from Barter Hordes in his Ethan Frome video recently was talking about symbolism and how sometimes a blue curtain is just a damn blue curtain. And I totally am on board with that concept completely. But I just can't get past the mule thing. I really cannot. I think that is just the weirdest occupation for the author to have chosen. And I think there's something there. And I've tried to talk myself down from it. But I think you're onto something. It is weird to think, I know, that the genetics of mule husbandry would be symbolic. But just the concept of, the donkey and the horse coming together to make the mule, and that not being a natural design, but one that's man-made, and the mule being more clever. I've been mulling this over, and your thoughts on home have solidified it. And I just think it is just one more way to reinforce this idea of duality in the book. It's just brought forth time and time and time again in this book. You've got the thoughts on home, the duality of that we just discussed. You've got the scenes of the rape scenes with the Shawnee boy with his sister, and with Bess happening back to back in the book. That was pretty profound. You've got religion, which we haven't talked about, but when Old Woman from a Distance is riding back east to deliver the letters to Bess, he's thinking about the Great Spirit and how he'd been taught that the Great Spirit, he actually knew about these mythic beasts from tales that his tribe had told. And the tales are that the Great Spirit came and just killed them all and saved them. And so he's thinking, why didn't the Great Spirit save us from the white man? And then there she goes with the very next chapter. You've got, Bess up against the wall with this guy about to rape her. And, here her Aunt Julie is off at church having this holy moment under this new stained glass window. And who's on the stained glass window? Moses. Moses, the man who wandered in the wilderness. I mean, wow. But it's that duality again. It's just amazing. And then the spot where I just couldn't help myself anymore, I had to go with it, is that spur of the moment inclination of the boy. He's got no arrows left for his bow. He's used them all and lost them. Last minute, he pulls the mother's knitting needle from his bag, notches it with his teeth. The bow, his bow, and the mother's knitting needle, the duality of cultures there is just kind of epic. I couldn't help myself. And even finally, you've got the Old Woman from a Distance himself coming in with her mother's and her father's clothing on. It's just too much to ignore. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna leave you there with that mule symbolism to mull over. And one more thing, and then I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this riding off into the sunset, this is the best one that I've ever read in literature or seen anywhere. The very best. Wow, what an ending. It has been so much fun reading this with you, Shawn, and I can't wait to hear what else you have to say. And thanks for inviting me to this. And wow, everyone needs to try out this book. West is phenomenal. Chat with you soon. Bye.
Hey, Doris. Well, here we are at the end of this fabulous buddy reading video collaboration. It's been a hoot. And the first thing I want to say is your video footage of the donkey and the waterfall and the Trail of Tears has been fabulous. And I've never commented on it because I'm so bookish obsessed, and once I address my mind to what I want to talk about in the book, I completely forget to comment on the fabulous other footage that you've included as part of this collaboration. It's just been stunning. So the Tale of Tears looks, and I could feel the sadness as you talked about it. You left me a corker of a question about the mule and the donkey and the horse, so I have to admit to you that I don't think I was fully aware until I read this book and did some Googling that the mule is the offspring of a donkey and a horse. I barely knew what a donkey was. I watched Francis the Talking Mule when I was a kid. Not that I'm old enough that was a contemporary movie of mine, but it was played on TV when I was a kid, and it's this terrible series of movies. It has no merit whatsoever, but that was probably my one experience of a mule. So I got nothing. I reread some of the parts of the book about it today, and I was intrigued by when Bess is watching her before her father leaves. She's a young girl and she's watching her father and the ogre of a neighbor, whose name has gone out of my head, on the farm, and she recites this long list of what a hinny is and what a donkey is and what the offspring of a mule and all that. And then she ends with, and a mule is also known as an ass, and she runs away. Seemed really significant, don't know what to make of it. Also the conversation between Bess and her father just before he leaves. And she's saying, why don't you take the mule? Why are you taking the horse? And he says, I'll come home faster if I'm on the horse. And then we find out he had considered taking both the mule and the donkey, and the mule to take the things. And a mule is not a pack mule, right? Mules are for carting things. Horses are for carting people. So that's interesting. But beyond that, I don't know. I found one article online that was a work of literary criticism that said mules suffer a bad end in so much Southern fiction. Cormac McCarthy, William Faulkner, Truman Capote. Mules die in very strange ways in fiction. That didn't help me with this book at all. So that's all I got. I loved your little riff on the duality and the way that played out. I mean, the knitting needles and the mother's clothes, and the fact that really, in a way, it's almost as if Old Woman from a Distance is Bess's mum from a distance, so that she, in a way, she did come home and did save Bess. So that's, wow. There's so much. So yeah, what you said. And just finally, to end this, if you haven't read Carys Davies' short story collection, The Redemption of Galen Pike, please do. And the opening story, which is called The Quiet, there's an interesting resonance between it. It's also set in the Old West. I don't know if the geography of it, but it's in frontier America. And there's a really interesting resonance between the abuse of this novel, the domestic abuse of this novel, and that story. That's all I'm going to say. You should read it. It's been a delight. I hope we can do it. I hope we can do this with another book soon. Yeah, thanks. Had a great time.